At the start of the story, we see Detective Williams heading to a crime scene to investigate a case. An officer warned him, "Sir, you better hold your nose. The smell in here is unbearable." When Williams stepped inside, he saw the body of a heavy-set man lying there. The whole house was stuffed with food, like the guy kept eating until his stomach just gave out. Officer David noticed a bucket on the floor filled with the man's vomit and feces. From the crime scene, it was clear this wasn't something he did willingly. It was forced on him. When the forensic team did a thorough examination, what they found was even more shocking. The doctor said it took 4 people to lift him. A gun was pressed against his head with so much force that it left marks everywhere. Maybe that's why he kept eating until his stomach burst. The report also revealed that he was force-fed non-stop for 12 hours straight, which dried out his throat. Then someone kicked him hard in the stomach, causing his intestines to come out. When William heard this, when he read the report out loud to his senior, the senior just couldn't believe it for a moment. He thought this had to be the work of some crazy guy who probably had a problem with the victim's weight, and that's why he killed him. But William said if his intention was just to kill, he would have shot him straight away. He told him, "Sir, I'm not going to work on this case. Please assign it to someone else." It wasn't that he couldn't solve the case. The real reason was that he was about to retire in 7 days, and cases like these usually drag on for a long time. He also said not to give this case to David because he's not ready yet. He said that because David had just been transferred to the city today, he'd barely been here 20 minutes when they threw him into this case, which wasn't the right way to do it. David felt like William didn't think he was capable. He said, "If you've got something against me, say it to my face. Ever since I got here, you've been trying to put me down. I'm not just some guard. I've got the same badge you do." Still, their senior was William. He takes charge of the case. The next day, Tuesday, we see an officer coming out of a big building, only to find himself surrounded by reporters. It turns out there's been another murder, and this time the victim wasn't just some random guy. He was a famous lawyer, and news of his death caused a huge sensation. When David got to the lawyer's apartment, he saw that the killer had written something on the floor in blood. It said greed. It seemed like the killer was trying to say that he punished the man for his greed. Meanwhile, William Sr. comes to see him. He knew William didn't want to work on this case, but he wanted to try one more time, hoping William might change his mind. He showed William a bottle containing some pieces of wood that the forensic team had taken out of that big guy's stomach. At first, William pretended he wasn't interested in the case, but he couldn't hold back the cop inside him for long. In the middle of the night, he quietly heads back to the crime scene and starts looking for the spot where the wood was scratched. She had gone. He found some marks under the fridge, and when William matched those pieces to the marks, they fit perfectly. When William moved the fridge, he found a note behind it that said the path from hell to sound is long and painful. There was also a word written there, just like on the last note, and that word was gluttony, which means the habit of eating and drinking too much. William now realized that they hadn't found these clues by chance. The killer had deliberately left them, like he was showing them the way. He put the pieces of both murders together and came to the conclusion that this is just the beginning. The killer is going to commit 5 more murders. His senior asked, "How do you know he'll do that? How can you be so sure?" William replied, "Have you heard of the 7 deadly sins? The Bible talks about 7 sins people shouldn't commit. The first is greed. Then comes gluttony, which means eating more than you need. Third is laziness. Fourth is lust, followed by pride, envy, and anger." So far, the murders are linked to 2 of these sins. That means the killer was going to commit one murder after another for the remaining 5 sins. The commissioner found his words convincing. That's why he wanted William to handle the case. But William flat out refused to get involved. He wanted to stay away from it. Still, it seemed like the killer had already planted a picture of the evidence in his mind that he just couldn't shake off. Without even trying, clues kept coming to him, and once those clues settled in his mind, he couldn't stop himself from working on them. Getting the information was impossible for William. That night, when he couldn't sleep, he went to the library. William wanted to learn more deeply about these 7 sins. So, he pulled out books that were written 600 to 700 years ago, back when people actually feared these sins. He spent the whole night reading those books, photocopied the parts he found useful, put them in an envelope, and left it on David's desk before leaving. You're probably wondering what kind of detective he is. First, he refuses to work on the case, and then he goes ahead and gathers all the evidence himself. It gets stuck. Actually, guys, William wanted to stay away from this case because right from the start, he knew it was going to be nasty and complicated. He was fed up with this city. He had lost all faith in justice and this hollow system. The next day, when David went to the police station, he found out that William's desk was now his. He had just sat down at his seat when he got a call from his wife, Tracy. David told her she shouldn't be calling at a time like this. But actually, Tracy wanted to talk to William. She said he was invited for dinner because he was alone in the city, and it was important for him to meet someone who could help him adjust to the new environment. That very night, William went to their house. During the conversation, Tracy laughed and asked why he hadn't gotten married yet. William replied that there had been a girl in his life, but things didn't work out. Besides, anyone who spends too much time with me ends up hating me. You can ask your husband about that. That night, William realized that David Wake was the most haita. He's a lucky guy to have a wife like Tracy. The 3 of them talked a lot and shared plenty of laughs. The best thing about this meeting was that it eased a lot of the tension between David and William. Now they started to understand each other better. After eating, David pulled out all the case files, and they both sat down to figure out how to catch this serial killer. William said the killer plans every murder carefully. He wants to send a message, not by talking, but by punishing. David agreed. He agreed with the point. He believed that people usually don't repent for their sins out of fear of God. They do it only when there's a gun pointed at their head. William said, pick any one of these pictures and keep staring at it until every possible connection in your mind is exhausted. They spent the whole night doing just that. They didn't get anything concrete directly, but William felt that the lawyer's wife might have some important information because the killer had drawn a pair of glasses in blood over her picture. The next day he went to meet her. She was so scared that she couldn't even look at the pictures properly. But as soon as her eyes landed on a painting in her house, she immediately said it was hung upside down. That night, they both went back to the apartment. They carefully checked the wall all around that painting. At first, they didn't find anything. David said the killer was probably trying to mislead them. But William replied, look closely, there's gotta be something. Then William took out some charcoal powder and gently brushed it onto the wall. They lifted the prints. Then some fingerprints started to show up. When the forensic team shone UV light on them, they found out that the killer had actually written a message using those fingerprints. Back then, it took the computer 2 whole days to match a single fingerprint, so they had no choice but to wait. Finally, after 2 days, they got a match for the fingerprint. The name was Victor, a criminal with a really bad record. He had charges for drugs, theft, robbery, and even rape of a girl. But every time his clever lawyer managed to get him off, he used to avoid legal troubles. And just think, who was that lawyer? None other than Eli Gold, the same guy whose house had Victor's fingerprints. The whole police team set out for Victor's place to catch him. They surrounded the entire apartment from all sides, making sure there was no way he could escape. But when the team went inside, what they saw was nothing like they expected. The apartment was rotting from the inside like it hadn't been cleaned for years. They called out to Victor, telling him to surrender, but there was no response. He came in. When they finally reached his bedroom, they saw Victor lying on the bed covered with a sheet. One officer joked, well, looks like you're sleeping in jail now. But as soon as they pulled the sheet off, they noticed Victor's body had been rotting right there. The killer had written on the wall, "Slot," meaning laziness, and the punishment for this sin was the worst. Inside, they found some pictures. One was taken just 3 days ago. meaning the killer had been there 3 days prior. Another photo was exactly a year old, showing Victor tied to that bed. He was lying there, his body melted into the bed. As soon as an officer came close to check his face, Victor suddenly screamed. Everyone was shocked because no one expected him to be alive. He was rushed to the hospital immediately, but his condition was so critical that only a miracle could save him now. Meanwhile, a photographer at the crime scene took a picture of David, which David really didn't like. They argued, and in anger, David scolded the photographer and chased him away. The doctor then said that judging by his spine and muscles, it looked like he hadn't moved at all for a whole year. We found a ton of drugs and antibiotics in his body, probably given by the killer to keep infections at bay. William wanted to talk to him, but the doctor told him it was pointless. He'd already bitten off his own tongue, and even the slightest light on his face would kill him. They'd never seen anyone suffer as much as he had, and there was still a long way to go. That night, William gets a call from Tracy, who wants to meet him alone. William feels a bit weird about it, but still goes to see her the next day. Tracy says she didn't want to be a burden on David, so she thought it was better to talk to him. She says she doesn't like this city. She tried looking for a job, but things are tough here. William asks straight up what's really going on. That's when Tracy tells him she's pregnant. William says she should have told David directly since it's his baby after all. But Tracy said she's not sure if she should bring her child into a place like this. William said that years ago he had a girlfriend too. Back then she also wondered how she could bring a child into this world. So she got an abortion. Now when I see the state of this city, it feels like we made the right decision. But not a day goes by that I don't think maybe I should have chosen differently. He said if you want to have this baby, you have to love it a lot. But if you want an abortion, if we're going to do this, never let David find out about the pregnancy. After that, he got busy with his case again. David and I sat down to figure out the killer's next move, since we'd already dealt with the punishment for 3 of the 7 deadly sins. 4 were left, but in a city already so corrupt, guessing who he'd target next was impossible. David said he was crazy, but William thought differently. He said, if he were really crazy, why would we go to Victor's room exactly 1 year later on the same date? We went because he had everything. He had already thought it through. He's really clever. Hearing all the praise about him annoyed David. He said, reading 4 books on sins doesn't make you wise. He's just a weirdo with a screw loose. Hearing this, a light bulb went off in William's head. He realized the killer knew a lot about forensics, drugs, antibiotics, and history. And where else would he have learned all that? He must have read books on these subjects. That meant if he could find out which books on these topics were recently borrowed from the library. So if they find out who issued the books, they might even catch the killer. What he was about to do was kind of illegal. William met a guy and slipped some money to him under the table. The guy said, just give me an hour. I'll meet you right here again. After that, William told David that some special books in every library are marked, and if anyone issues those books, their name automatically gets recorded in the FBI's system. This is done so no one can use those books to make bombs or perform surgery on themselves. It's like learning a skill but making sure you don't harm anyone. The killer has read a lot of books from here, and if he picked up even one wrong book, his name would definitely be on their list. A little while later, the same guy came back and handed them that list. It had the names of several people who had borrowed books on really weird topics, but there was one name that stood out and looked the most suspicious. David joked, "So what now? Should we go to his house, knock on the door, and say, 'Hello, Mr. Serial Killer, did you kill these people?'" David was really hesitant about knocking on that door. He was scared. He was worried he might run away. But just then, Will saw a guy coming their way. As soon as the guy spotted them, he opened fire and then took off. David chased after him, but the guy was way too fast. David kept following him, stumbling and falling near the building. until finally he reached a spot where they were alone. The moment David got distracted, the killer attacked him from behind, making David drop his gun. The killer could have killed David right then and there, but he didn't. He just walked away. David was furious, but William, he tried to explain to him that they couldn't just barge into his house without an arrest warrant. If they did, it would be hard to explain to the police why and how they got in there. But David didn't listen and kicked the gate down. Then he paid a woman some money to lie, so the police would think they only came after she called. Once inside, William saw there were over 2,000 books and also the killer's notes, though none of them had dates. Meanwhile, David found a bunch of photos. Among those photos was one of him too. And when David saw it, he realized he had already met the killer, he just hadn't recognized him. The photographer they met on the stairs at Victor's house was actually the killer. Soon, the forensic team reported that they hadn't found a single fingerprint anywhere in the house. They were still talking when the phone rang. Before it could hang up, David quickly grabbed the phone, and when he answered, it was the killer on the line. He said, "I can't believe you found me. Every day my respect for the police keeps growing." She even apologized to David and said, "I never meant to hurt you, but things got so complicated that I had no choice. I hope you can forgive me." And with that, she hung up. They found a receipt from a leather shop and a photo of a prostitute there. They realized John's next target was that girl. They quickly went to the leather shop and asked, "Who did you give this receipt to?" The shop sold custom strap-ons and other sexual toys. Things were being sold, and when the shopkeeper showed what the man had asked him to make, both of them were stunned. It was a step-on device with a sharp knife attached to it. Before they could find that girl, they learned that someone had been murdered in the bar. When they arrived, they saw a man screaming in fear. On the bed lay the dead body of the girl, with whom the man had forcibly been physical. This time, the word lust was written on the door. It meant that the girl's sin was that she was involved with men. He was the center of desire. During the investigation, the man told them that someone had put a gun to his mouth and then forced him to wear knife-tipped step-ons and sleep with that girl. His whole body was shaking as he described it, which shows just how cruel John was to give that girl such a painful and disgusting death. That night, David and William drank heavily to try and forget everything for a while. David questioned William's habits, asking, "Why are you like this? I mean, why so selfish and only thinking about yourself?" William said, "I used to be like you once, but this city changed me. I've seen that getting lost in drugs is easier than facing life head-on. It's easier to steal something than to work hard for it. Killing kids is easier than raising them." David said, "You should really listen to what you're saying. Sure, you've been through a lot, but that doesn't mean you should stop caring. You hate this city. You think it's ruined. That's why you want to retire. But I believe change is possible. A better life can be made here. You want me to just agree with you, to say you're right, that this world is useless, that it's really bad. But no, I won't say that. I don't agree with you." Hearing this, William couldn't sleep all night. For the first time, his anger was coming out, anger he'd been holding inside for years. The next day, a man calls the emergency helpline and says he's killed again. When William arrives at the crime scene, there's a girl's body lying there. This murder was done by John too, and this time on the wall, pride basically meant arrogance. When the doctor removed the bandage from the girl's face, he saw that John had ripped the skin off her face and had even cut off her nose. Seeing her holding a phone in one hand and sleeping pills in the other, William realized John had actually given her a chance to live. She could have called an ambulance, but if she survived, she'd have to live her whole life with that ugly face. Her pride and her beauty would be completely shattered. So, she chose death over living and took the sleeping pills. He committed suicide. William said, "Now only 2 sins are left, anger and jealousy. I'm not going to drop this case. Even after I retire, I'll keep working on it. Either we catch him, or John will kill them too, and this case will drag on for years." As they talked, They both walked into the police station. Unbeknownst to them, a man was following them. He called out, trying to get them to stop, but they were so caught up in the case that they didn't hear him. The man followed them inside the police station and shouted, "Detective, I'm here." He raised his hands. He spread out and showed his blood-soaked body. His fingers were cut off so they couldn't identify him through fingerprints. David realized it was John. Right after that, he arrested him immediately. But there was no fear on John's face. He said, "I'll tell everything, but first, I want to talk to my lawyer." After talking to him, his lawyer told them that his client was ready to confess to all his crimes and would also reveal the whereabouts of the other two bodies the police hadn't found yet. But he had one condition, that he wanted David and William to, "He'll tell us where he hid those bodies." One officer says, "I don't care if those bodies rot away. We just need to lock this lunatic up." But his lawyer said, "If you do that, he'll prove himself insane in court and dodge the sentence." William said, "If you try to prove him insane, we'll tell the court he's blackmailing us." The lawyer agreed with that, but warned, "If you do that, you'll never find the other two bodies, and the press will blow it all up." They will. If they find out that the cops aren't really interested in finding those two, then nothing will happen. So it was best to listen to John. In the end, both agreed to it. They got John into the car and started heading to the location he gave. David asked, "Why did you do that?" John replied, "If you just pat them on the shoulder and say something, they'll never listen to you. But if you hit that same shoulder with a hammer, they'll have to pay attention and even ask questions. That's exactly what I did. And look, now everyone's eyes are on it. It's on me." David said there's no need to get too happy. In a couple of months, you'll forget about a weirdo like you. But John didn't buy that. He felt like God himself had chosen him for this. He enjoyed drowning sinners in their own sins. So far, John had been answering all his questions pretty calmly. But the moment David said he had killed innocent people, John's anger exploded. He said this is some kind of joke. None of them were innocent. There was a fat, disgusting man who could barely stand. A guy you see eating and you just can't get a bite in your mouth. He was innocent. Then I picked that lawyer who spent his whole life lying just for money. A girl who's so ugly inside that she can't stand not looking beautiful on the outside. You're talking about Victor, that drug dealer who sold drugs and raped a girl. And don't forget that disease-spreading prostitute. This world has sunk so low that you're calling all these people innocent. And you say that to me, looking me in the eye. John said, "But I know. Look, it's not your fault. We see wrongdoing everywhere, but no one does anything about it. Everyone just puts up with it because it's become normal. But people aren't going to take it anymore. They'll call me a savior, and what I've done, people will think about it, understand it, and worship me." David thought he'd completely lost it. But John said, "You should be thanking me, because after all this is over, everyone will remember you." He quickly pissed David off, then smiled at him. Soon, they arrived at the location. John told them what he knew. William pulled him out of the car and started checking around to make sure there was no danger nearby. John said, "It's time. He's going to show up any minute now." Just then, they saw a van speeding straight toward them. William immediately went over and stopped it before it could get any closer. A guy got out, looking really scared. When William searched him, he found out the guy was just a regular courier. The guy took out a box from inside and said someone had told him to deliver it to David Mills. William, he received the package and told him to leave the car there and run back the way he came. David was standing far away asking what was in the box, but his voice didn't reach Will. As soon as William opened the box, his face went pale. In a panicked voice, he said, "Don't come here, we're all caught in his trap." Will immediately ran towards David to stop him. But by then, John had already made his move. He told David, "I wish my life was like yours." He said how much he liked him and his wife. "Your wife Tracy is honestly the best and truest woman in the world." Hearing his wife's name come out of a killer's mouth made David's blood boil. But what John said next could have crushed anyone's heart. John said, "I went to your house today. I tried to be a good person, a good husband, but I couldn't. So I took a keepsake from your home. Want to know what it is? Your wife's beautiful head." William told David, "Give me my gun back. He's purposely trying to make you angry." David couldn't believe what he was hearing, so he asked, "What's in the box?" But William didn't have the courage to tell the truth. He just wanted to calm him down somehow. He said, "I was jealous of your happy life, and that's my sin. She was begging me for the life of herself and the baby growing inside her." The moment David heard about the baby, he completely broke down. He didn't even know his wife was pregnant. And when John realized this, he started laughing at David's state. William tried to explain. He tried to make it seem like that's exactly what he wanted, for you to kill him. If you kill a criminal, whoever finds out will come after you. David realized that the box held Tracy's severed head. Just thinking about her face brought tears to his eyes. He tried to pull the trigger multiple times, but the more he held himself back, the more the pain inside him grew. In that moment, all he felt was pure hatred, and it boiled over so much that David's anger exploded, and he emptied the whole magazine into John's chest. John died, but in the end it was the same. He got what he wanted. He forced a guy like David to turn into a monster. That's how he completed his masterpiece. The police took David into custody. Now he'll stand trial, and William will try to get him the lightest sentence possible. But no one could have guessed what was going on in David's heart. In the end, William says John won. His real goal was to send a message. He wanted the world to see that sin isn't just lurking around the corner. It's everywhere. Even in the law, even in the police, even inside the houses. And with that, the movie ends right here. Now the question is for you. If you were Detective David, would you have shot, or would you have endured everything and not let him win? Be sure to let us know in the comments. And if you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel